Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this new webinar on creating great YouTube campaigns. My name is Karen Cahill. I'll be your host today. Scott Lawrence and Bella Robbins are also on the line to walk us through some of these building blocks.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
And those who have joined us before already know what I'm going to say next, because I remind everyone at the beginning of each webinar that questions and comments should really be written in the Q&A box rather than the chat box. That way, if we can't get to your question during the webinar, we can pull it from the Q&A report afterwards and get back to you later. The chat box isn't saved in Zoom. And we'll also provide you an email at the end of this for any additional questions you may have.
And just really quickly, let me say that ResponseMind Digital is a digital direct response marketing agency based in Atlanta, Georgia.
And also, we've gotten questions about what our name means. Response actually refers to the fact that we're a direct response digital marketing agency. Everything we do is to get customers to respond to our clients' digital marketing, because marketing is really about getting responses and conversions and just making sales.
Right. Marketing is about making sales. And the word mine in ResponseMind refers to how we're always mining for responses. We're mining for riches. Unlike traditional marketing, digital marketing allows us to test constantly, to have very quick turnarounds and ensure the best ads and landing pages and content are performing in order to make those sales.
Okay, so let's take a quick look at today's agenda. Here's what we're going to cover. We're going to start by talking about why YouTube deserves its very own webinar. Then we'll go into some detail about what the ideal prospect of a particular industry looks like and how we figure that out.
And in this webinar, we're going to build a faux YouTube campaign based on how we might set it up for one of our current national clients who sells flooring and tile to end users. So the industry that we'll model the YouTube campaign around is probably best described as home improvement.
And Scott is going to cover a pretty brief research segment at the beginning called Know Your Prospects Through Research. And then we'll cover strategy and tactics for using that research to build a great YouTube campaign.
And we have a couple of what we're calling fun trivia questions throughout the webinar. We like to gamify the webinar just to try to make it a little more fun and interactive, even more than actually having our faces live on the screen, which is pretty new for us after doing webinars for the last 2 years. Anyway, I just want to encourage everyone to participate in those fun trivia questions. The questions are completely anonymous. We can't see who answers. So we won't make fun of someone who says that, Google was started in the 80s. We only put fun questions in there because, again, we think it's fun, but they're only fun if we have enough people participate. So please do. And remember, this is a live webinar. You're not looking at recorded talking heads anymore.
Right. And the last thing is another relatively new addition to our webinars. We've started including the agenda at the bottom of every page, so everyone knows where we are in the program. When we're on the research segment, that'll be highlighted at the bottom, and next the placement strategy and so on. As we work our way through, everyone should be able to see where we are and what's coming up next, leading to the end where we'll show what we think are really great examples of great videos and sequences. And we'll talk a lot more about that in the next 45 minutes.
And right in the middle of the webinar, we're actually going to take a 2-minute timeout to tell everyone a little about who we are at R&D. That's the commercial there in orange in the middle. So with all that laid out, let's move into the why YouTube segment. And we only have a couple of slides on why this webinar is on YouTube. And I guess that's because people probably wouldn't have registered to attend today if they didn't see the promise of YouTube marketing. So with that said, we have a couple of statistics to share that maybe not everyone realizes.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of hoopla over how popular YouTube is. So we thought we'd show what video platforms businesses actually use most to promote their businesses.
So I know that Facebook is really popular with consumers, but I wouldn't have guessed Facebook would be that much more popular for business video posts.
Yeah, well, according to buffer.com and their their social media managers at different businesses, for whatever reason, Facebook is actually 29% more popular for businesses than most that post their videos online.
And that's a nice setup for our next slide.
Yeah, so appearing on the screen now are the results from the yearly Pew Research Center. Each year Pew asks US adults what social media platforms they use. So for instance, you can see that Instagram has grown over the years, so that now 40% of US adults say they use Instagram. And by the way, the people attending today who also attended our Facebook webinar have had a sneak peek at this, because we use this chart in that webinar as well.
But we removed the Facebook and YouTube trend lines from this chart in order to test everyone's knowledge. We thought it was a great spot to throw in our first trivia question of the day. As Bella said, it's completely anonymous, so please tell us what you think when you see the question appear on your screen.
And the answers are coming in now. Thank you. This is a pretty simple one. Which one is more popular, YouTube or Facebook? And I'm going to give you another, I don't know, 3 seconds. We've got, so we got 76% participating, 77 now, 79. All right, I'm going to call it 44%. Oh, somebody jumped in there. 44% said YouTube is viewed more, and 56% said Facebook is viewed more. So thank you for participating.
Well, it turns out that YouTube has an edge over Facebook for the last couple of years, and that edge is growing, with Facebook leveling off in the last couple of years.
Right. Well, for some reason, Pew Research started tracking YouTube with social media platforms in 2018, although I think most of us don't really consider YouTube to actually be an example of social media.
Yeah, at any rate, according to Pew Research, more adults in the US watch YouTube more than Facebook, which may mean there's a disparity between where businesses are targeting their video content and where their audiences are most likely to see their videos.
That's right. And there's another point worth considering too. And we don't have time to get into too much detail here today, but by the way, we actually have a full webinar on the future of marketing in a cookieless internet, if you're interested. Anyway, in the future, Facebook is likely to have a much more difficult time targeting consumers than Google is going to have. And of course, YouTube, which is owned by Google, uses Google Ads to target prospects. We're going to talk a lot more about that in just a minute.
Yeah, and as Scott said, if anyone would like to have a recording of the cookieless internet webinar, just let us know. But I think it provides a nice segue to the next segment on knowing your prospects. Google says they will do away with third-party cookie tracking in Google Chrome, which Google announced recently that they're pushing back from 2022 to 2023. But that means that businesses will very likely need to have much stronger handle on their best prospects without counting on third-party data and logic. So now we'll briefly go over how to do that before we dive into YouTube strategy and tactics. So in a few webinars, we've talked about the importance of understanding who your best prospects are. And once again, we're going to try and show that with a little bit of inexpensive research. We're able to have much more cost-effective marketing campaigns.
Right, and again, we need to choose a business and industry to create a YouTube campaign around. So we're going to use one of our national retail clients in home improvement to build this YouTube campaign.
And just to be clear, although we've chosen to model our research around the home improvement sector, the tactics and strategies we're going to cover today are pretty ubiquitous. This type of research should be applicable to just about all B2C businesses and industries.
That's right.
Okay, here's a quick setup. At the top of the screen is the question we asked people when conducting research on ideal prospects. We surveyed random people and asked if they had recently remodeled or if they were planning to remodel in the next 2 years.
Yeah, but we did set some parameters around it so that we could also make the most of our research budget. We placed limitations on who would receive our survey based on the target market. We obviously wanted to survey only people who owned a home rather than renters. And we included a minimum household income of $100,000 just to ensure we were reaching people with enough disposable income to have the means to remodel their homes.
Right, and Scott, that's not to say that people making less wouldn't be able to afford a remodel.
That's right. No, I only put that criterion in place because it's a little trick to ensure we're making the most of our research budget. And just about all research, you have to first find your perfect target audience, and then you have to hit them with a series of questions, as we'll see in just a second.
Okay, so let's see the research graphs. And Scott, maybe you could tell us what we're looking at here.
Right, well, you can see it's a national poll, and we'll look at the demographics of the respondents in just a minute. But as you'll see, they could answer with one of 7 options. These first 3 pertain to whether they were planning to remodel their bathroom, kitchen, or another room.
So those are the people who are planning to remodel, which means that the next group is made up of people who have already remodeled.
Right, and you can see they're all pretty similar. You know, all groups are about 11 to 17%.
So that means that the red 22% are the people who said they haven't remodeled and they have no intention of remodeling.
Exactly, and as I said, the reason we limited the respondent sample by income is because we aren't able to use any further feedback from this group right here. So we threw them out. And we're only going to ask further questions from the group left on the screen. But before we dive deeper, I thought I'd share some demographics of the group we surveyed. So we can limit the respondents by any of these demographics, but the real power of having access to these demographics is the data analysis afterward. We know from the data, for instance, that much more than any other group, Caucasian women between the ages of 25 and 34 said they have no plans to remodel anywhere.
Yeah, as a reminder, and for any of the folks on today who have joined a little late, we're going over this quick research segment because we're going to build a YouTube campaign based on what we find here. So, Scott, you said you continue to ask this remaining 78% of the respondent group further questions. So let's talk a little bit about that. And let's take a look at the other questions that we asked these folks.
All right, so of the people who said they had or were going to remodel, we wanted to know how they preferred to buy the home improvement items. So we just surveyed them. And
one answer really ran away with it.
Yeah, almost 2/3 said they preferred to look first online and then go to the store. That's that big yellow section. But they had 4 choices. You know, 11% said they wanted to purchase everything online without having to go to the store, and another 11% said that they wanted to visit first, then buy it online.
But that gray 15% on the left are those who want to go to the store and buy it at the store. They don't feel like they need to go online or look at their options.
Right. So their input's not going to be important to us anymore. So we had to throw this group out too. And what that means is that the remaining 85%, everyone left on the screen, are online at some point looking for remodeling solutions.
And that's the group we're going to continue to survey.
Right. And the reason we ask more questions is because now that we know these guys are shopping online, we can pepper them with lots more questions, like how far they're willing to travel to get to the home improvement store.
Yeah, that way you know how far you can geo-target certain types of consumers. So let's move into that. This graph will only show the responses from the 63% from the last slide, people who looked online and then visited the store. And here's that pie chart. So anything jump out from this graph like the last one, Scott?
Yeah, no, not really, other than that no one claimed they weren't willing to travel at least 10 minutes. And that's what that little 0 is right there. And that made us think that our respondents were at least being truthful.
So this is pretty evenly broken out, with more than 3/4 of people saying they travel at least 40 minutes. So I think that'd be pretty good news for our home improvement client. They can specifically advertise to people farther away than most might have thought.
Right, and the digital marketing tools like Google's YouTube are really actually very good at segmenting prospects based on geography, but also their demographics, what they like, even their browsing history, as we're going to see in just a minute.
And the point is that you will have much more impactful marketing campaigns when you do this type of research.
Right.
Okay, now we want to dig just a little deeper into each of these segments of the people we surveyed to see if there are any major differences between those who are willing to travel farther distances to buy home improvement products.
Okay, and I'm going to try to go over each of these different colored pie pieces very quickly because we have a lot to get through. But this data will be important when we go through the tactical segment of setting up your YouTube campaign and Google Ads using demographics and audiences.
And since you want to cover off on each piece, we should point out that as we travel around the pie chart clockwise, respondents say they're more willing to travel a longer amount of time to visit the tile and flooring store.
Yep. Okay, the first pie piece of the people who said they were only willing to travel 20 minutes or less from their homes, 2/3 of them are male. Also, 24% of this group were single rather than married. So next we looked at these people who said they'd travel up to 30 minutes away.
So females make up a larger percentage here than the one above it.
That's right, and only 13% were single.
And we're still moving clockwise around the pie chart where people are willing to travel farther distances to visit a home improvement store. And it looks like we have a few more females and fewer males here. And all of these people are willing to travel 30 to 40 minutes. Oh, the ones that are willing to travel 30 to 40 minutes from home are married.
That's right, all of them.
Okay, so married people seem to be willing to travel a further amount of time away from home.
Yep, and that's all stuff that you can target with Google Ads. And it's not on here, but the age range of 60 to 64 chose this 30 to 40 minute travel time much more than any others. In fact, it was statistically significant. That's the kind of thing you can get from data just by asking a few basic survey questions of the consumers in your area.
Okay, moving along. I don't think it's my imagination that women appear to be growing stronger in the category of willingness to travel.
That's right, and they're all married again.
Yeah, so men aren't willing to travel as far, but if they are willing to travel, they're all married men. And that's really good information for marketers to know.
That's right, yes it is. So we're getting really good information for who to target with our YouTube videos farther from the store. And that makes a much more efficient use of our budget. You can narrow the scope for who we target. And it's not on this slide, but we also know that this group is older with more household income, which is a demographic you can also target with YouTube.
And the last piece of the pie, the furthest amount of time traveled away from the home. And the men are dropping like flies the further they have to travel away from home.
Right. Well, again, this is just a brief snapshot of a few of the really many great data points you can get from research. And there are many other demographics that we haven't even shared. At any rate, after Bella covers off on the video placement strategy, I'll show you how to use the data we just reviewed to save a lot of money when you set up your targeting for your YouTube video ads.
Okay, and now we're at that video placement strategy section, and this is where we're going to talk about how long we think the ads should be, whether they should be skippable or non-skippable, and what we think are best practices for showcasing your videos. And I think that everyone realizes that when given the choice, most people will skip the video ads as soon as they can in order to watch the video they're interested in. But we thought it would be fun to have everyone guess what percentage of the population will skip the ads when watching videos on their computers, at least according to one study. So if you would please answer this, again, anonymous question we put on the screen. We'd love to get everyone participating. So the question is, what percentage of the population will skip video advertisements when watching on their computers? Is it 60, 65, 70, 75, or 80%?
Okay, this is a little more complicated, but I think we've got 77%, 79% have answered. So with 4 out of 5 people answering, I'm going to go ahead and call it. So only 7% said 60%. 9% of our audience said 65% skip. And then 18% said 70%. 28% of the audience said 75%, and the majority of people by far, 39% said 80%. So thank you for playing.
Yeah, and according to this behavioral study, people on their desktops and laptops skipped ahead about 2/3 of the time an ad appeared. Though I would also have guessed it would have been more than that.
Yeah, well, that may be because you watch videos more on your phone than your laptop. If we compare people's viewing habits on computers to their smartphone viewing, you can see that people willing to watch ads without skipping them is less than half of those on their computers.
Yeah, that's closer to what I would have guessed, but that raises the question of whether more people watch YouTube videos on their phones or on their computers.
Right. Well, the most comprehensive study we found on the behavior of YouTube viewers is by Magna Global, a division of the IPG Media Lab, which we're going to cover in more detail. But eMarketer in 2019 reported that 75% of all videos are played on mobile phones.
Yes, so more people are watching videos on their phones, and more people on their phones are skipping ads more frequently. So what about this Magna research?
Well, Magna studied more than 11,000 people and found that people's behavior also changed not only by device, but also based on where they are viewing it. So you can see from this graph that people at work seem to be more willing to watch the ad than people who are using their phones while they're out and about and not on company time.
So what was the end result?
Well, it helped us devise what we think is a pretty solid strategy for creating and placing paid video ads.
Okay, so first things first, one question we've heard a lot is whether video ads should be skippable or non-skippable, or is it a combination of both?
Well, Google, who again owns YouTube, doesn't position them as non-skippable or skippable ads, but that is certainly how the common YouTube viewer sees them. As we saw in the previous slide, skip rates definitely seem to indicate that most people would prefer to not watch ads.
Yeah, so do you think that means that all ads should be the non-skippable kind?
Actually, no. We think that all ads should be completely skippable for 4 reasons. The first reason is that, as we discussed, most people innately skip ads as soon as they can. We can safely infer from that that people don't like to be made to watch an ad. More to the point, requiring them to watch an ad probably doesn't provide a good user experience for your brand.
Yeah, that's a good point. But how do you enable them to have a good experience, but also get your message across?
Well, you have to put the time into creating shorter ads with very concise and succinct messaging that gets right to the point very quickly. Much more on that in just a moment.
But hang on a second, by implying that you need to put more time into creating a shorter ad, do you mean that it's more difficult to make a very short and concise ad than it is to make a longer ad?
Right. It's actually pretty difficult to get a compelling message across in 6 seconds. We have some examples of what we think are pretty great ads in the last segment of this webinar, but one of the fun little pro tips about how to do that most effectively, at least with YouTube, is by combining very short ads with sequences.
Okay, and we're going to get into that, the sequences, but first of all, what's the second reason?
So reason number 2 is that people really seem to be impressed with 6-second ads. So they're quick and easy and unobtrusive. People have come to expect a bumper ad nowadays, which is the name for those short 6-second ads at the beginning of videos, the ones with the countdown timer on them. They are the norm today. So it's important to engage the viewer very quickly. And the metrics of a 6-second ad are pretty impressive. The blue box here shows how skipped ads performed, and the pink box shows how concise bumper ads that get their message across in 6 seconds performed. So you can see the 6-second ad is more than twice as memorable as the longer ad that got skipped. And people's favorability and intent to buy something was also considerably higher for the 6-second ad. And that's important to those of us who are direct response marketers.
Yeah, that is pretty impressive. And what's the third reason?
The third reason is that we prefer using a cost per view or CPV rather than the CPM or the cost per thousand impressions model. And you can only use the cost per view model with skippable ads. And sequences only use skippable ads, which we're about to get into, with the exception of bumper ads, which again are those ads at the beginning of a video that are only skippable after 6 seconds.
Okay, got it. And the fourth reason?
The fourth reason is that we believe the risk of running non-skippable longer ads, which can be up to 15 seconds long, outweighs the reward. Actually, this is sort of a two-part answer. As I said a minute ago, not only do non-skippable ads have the chance of creating resentment against your brand, but non-skippable ads also cost more.
So that's how the cost outweighs the reward.
Well, in the matter of the risk outweighing the reward, the 6-second bumper ad actually performs better for the cost. The pink section here is the brand recall of the 6-second ad, and the magenta section here is the higher cost 15-second ad.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. There is slightly more recall, but there's no telling how favorable the brand is with the people who were forced to watch the 15-second non-skippable ad and who now may have an unfavorable impression of your brand.
Exactly.
So we've talked a lot about 6-second ads, but of course the title at the top of these slides is 6, 15, and 30-second sequences. So probably it's time for us to explain what sequences are.
Right. Well, sequences are really just a series of ads that play in order to a particular viewer. And we suggest you really only need 3 video ads to make a sequence. If the viewer sees 2 from the same brand, they might think it was chance, but 3 establishes a pattern.
And so why not 5 videos in a sequence?
Well, 5 may be okay, but you've established a pattern after 3, and if your ad doesn't resonate with them, they may start to resent being hounded with 4 more ads. Speaking of that, YouTube offers 2 options for sequences, 1 sequence per user every 7 days, or 1 sequence per user every 30 days. We suggest every 7 days. It works a lot like a frequency cap. So the people seeing your ad aren't growing fatigued at seeing the same ads over and over.
And that might mean that you should run sequences alongside independent ads, right?
Yes, that's true, because 1 sequence per week per user may not be enough to have an impact, but you could also have several sequence campaigns running in parallel.
And in what order should the videos play, from like shortest to longest as they want to your brand, or is it more random?
We recommend that all sequences start with a 6-second bumper ad for the reasons we previously discussed, but various ads will perform differently for reasons that are hard to explain. It usually has a lot to do with the creative. Again, we'll discuss that more in our last segment, but here's how we think optimal testing of ads should be done. If you always start your sequence with a 6-second bumper ad, that is, an ad that's created to just last those 6 seconds, it enables you to quickly introduce your product and leave the viewer before he or she leaves you. Anyway, if you have a 6-second, a 15-second, and a 30-second ad, you can run it in one of 3 ways. The first way is on the screen. This grouping is referred to as the tease, amplify, and echo model. In other words, you show a 6-second ad followed by a longer ad, followed by another 6-second ad. Think with Google.com says the tease, amplify, echo model leads to higher than average purchase intent. And you know, that's music to the ears of direct response marketers. This next grouping is known as the lead-in, which starts with a short video, but ends with a longer narrative to amplify the message. You can switch the order of the 15 and 30-second videos to see if there's any lift in conversions by showing them this 30-second video before the slightly shorter one. And then the last grouping we call the warm-up, because you serve them with 2 quick 6-second videos, but also hit them with something longer.
And I think we're going to see an example of the warm-up sequence in just a minute, but we also wanted to point out that 4 of these series include a double tap of 6-second videos. So in other words, they hit the viewer with 2 6-second videos at different times. Anyway, given that the research indicates that people actually prefer 6-second ads, well, having more of them isn't a bad idea, as long as you can have a longer one with a call to action.
Keep in mind that we've talked mostly about what we think is the most impactful method for reaching and engaging prospects in this segment. But it's also important to remember that if you have a longer ad that people don't watch to the end or don't click on to learn more, the advertiser is not charged for it.
Yeah, a minute ago you mentioned having a frequency cap, but there may be some people listening in that only have 1 or 2 ads and can't do ad sequences. Is there a limitation on how frequently they can run individual ads?
Well, we recommend frequency caps in all cases, and that's because people don't like to be bombarded constantly with the same ads. Our standard best practice is 5 per week.
Okay, so the next 2 segments are on the tactical application of segmenting and targeting your best prospects, followed by what we think are best-in-class examples of short or some clever videos. But right now, this is where Scott has inserted his 2-minute commercial about what we at ResponseMind Digital are all about. Scott?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Karen. I'm just here to tell everyone what we do, and one way to do that is talk about something that's very related to today's webinar. It has to do specifically with the research segment that I went over at the beginning of the webinar. So this audience segmentation here, audience segmentation insights project is similar to that brief research segment. So when you have research like that, you don't have to be relying on Facebook or even Google to tell you who your best prospects are, which is a good thing, because if you attended our webinar on marketing a cookieless internet, you realize that Facebook's ability to offer really targeted advertising is only going to be more and more difficult as third-party cookies and IDFAs are blocked. It's already started with the a few months ago. Safari blocks third-party cookies already, and they're gaining market share against Google Chrome's browser, Google's Chrome browser. So as a result, Chrome announced that they're going to stop using third-party cookies too. So everyone attending today should already have an email from me. An email was sent out with the agenda just before the webinar, and my team is actually the one that handles the audience segmentation and processes. So if you're interested in having us segment your audiences for you and tell you how and where to most efficiently and effectively you can get to your best prospects, just respond to the email or book time on my Calendly link, which is found in my auto signature in the email. And listen, this is the best money you can spend, because you'll make a much better use of your marketing budget by driving higher conversions with less money. Or just fill out the form, which should be launching right now. And that form is just where you can say, yeah, I'm interested in learning more about audience segmentation insights. But if you do choose, yes, I'm interested, just know you're going to have a conversation with me. So choose wisely. There's also a segment in there you can add if you're interested in talking to one of my colleagues about SEO and paid search, paid social, whatever, something else. We can also hook you up with somebody to talk about that. Okay, and that is the commercial. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So next we're going to set up a faux YouTube campaign, as well as see some examples of some great YouTube ads and sequences. If you could just please indicate your interest level in taking us up on this offer, we'd appreciate it. There's also a place on the form to indicate if you'd like to talk about other things we do, such as Scott said, our social media assessment and our paid search audit. So please respond to whatever tickles your fancy. We'll give you a few seconds to answer those 2 questions. And we'll leave the poll up for just a minute, but if we're going to finish by the top of the hour, we need to push on. But thank you for participating. We really do appreciate it. Okay, as promised, we've said we will show who to target and then how to target them using that research from earlier. So this is the how part of the equation. Scott had shared data that indicated prospective new customers looking for home improvement items had different purchase preferences based on demographics. So for instance, married older women were willing to travel a longer amount of time to get to the home improvement store. So now we'll just see how to put that research into practice using Google Ads.
Right. Well, of course, as we said, YouTube is owned by Google, and you place YouTube video ads using the Google Ads platform. So this might be somewhat remedial, this 6-minute video that I'm going to show, to show how Google Ads works. And I know it's going to be remedial to some of the gurus out there that are, Google Ads, what used to be AdWorks gurus. But we couldn't possibly have a webinar on YouTube without talking about how to place the ads inside of Google Ads. And rather than using still, screen grabs like we've done so far, in this segment, we decided to just go into Google Ads and show what a powerful interactive tool it is as it relates to YouTube audience. So the video I made is just one of many very narrowly focused campaigns in order to make the most of your marketing budget. And as we said, we realized from the research that married women were willing to travel farther from home. So this is how to narrowly target that particular prospective buying group, and just one of the campaigns that we would set up.
Okay, Scott, let's take a look at it.
Here we are inside of Google Ads, formerly known as Google AdWords. And I thought I'd show how we can utilize the demographics we pulled from the research in order to better target our ideal prospects. So first, I'd ask everyone to recall that in the research segment, we talked about how the people who were willing to travel farther distances or further amount of time seemed to have the same distinct commonality that they were female and married. There were a few other characteristics. They had a little more income and so forth. But just for the sake of time, we'll try to get through this by showing you how that works using demographics. So you can target by all of these things here on the left nav. But we'll pull up demographics, and you can see that we can go here to age, adjust the filter, and we can pull up any age range that we like. So we know that 18 to 24 is no good for them. We realized that women who were actually the average age was 44. So we'll go 35, 44, 55, 64, and now we're locking them in for this particular campaign that we want to run for women. And then next, we can go to gender. And again, we are trying to target females. So we find that the female gender, apply. Now we've got that locked in. And then the next step is just to go down here to locations. And we are going to try and target a particular location. So you go to select the campaign. And we can target by radius. I happen to know that this particular tile and flooring location near me is on Holcomb Bridge Road. So we'll choose that. And you can see now we're targeting 20 miles. And there you have it. We're going to save that into place. Next, I wanted to show you the audiences category, because this really gives you an abundance of power to really go in and target that group that you're trying to narrow the focus on. So you can find inside of audiences here, you've got search, ideas, and browse. But again, for our particular interest, we were looking for women who were married. But the next thing that we wanted to focus in on, and by the way, if they have higher education, we could certainly look at that if that was one of the parameters that we identified separated this particular group. But homeowner status, obviously, we wanted to get homeowners and not renters. So we'll just save that in place here. I also want to point out that you can get to these audiences a couple of different ways. So if we pull it up by the browse feature, certainly you can get to them by who they are, what their interests are. This was originally called affinity, and you could choose everyone in home and garden, but that is going to be too broad. So we'd want to pull up home and garden and do-it-yourselfers. This is using Google's logic to figure out who the do-it-yourselfers are, and it's almost creepy scary that they have this ability to track people in that way, but they do. And so we could, you can see that depending on what business you're running, there are a lot of different ways to target these people. So we're just going to lock that in. And I'll just point out that Google has identified in-market audiences. In-market audiences are those groups that they have identified as being potential buyers in your market for your product or service. So you can choose it through search, or you can go through browse. They go to the same place. It's just a different way of finding it. And of course, the next part is the in-market and life events. These in-market audiences are really quite valuable. Google offers a lot of data for you to utilize, whether it's home and garden or financial services. You know, if you're in the software business, it offers a lot for every type of business to target based upon their browsing history. Now, I'll point out that some folks have really honed in on keywords. So they wanted to find people based upon what keywords they're searching with. And we wouldn't really recommend that because you have the tendency then to hone in too narrowly on a target that based upon what you think the keywords should be, as opposed to using Google's logic. And in our case, we are trying to target a small town. So if you're targeting a small town and your whole audience is only a few thousand people, you need to use broader targeting, like topics, in-market audiences, or very large channels. On the other hand, if you're going to a larger area and your potential audience is in the tens of millions, so you have a national campaign you're running, you should use custom audiences or really specific placements to cut away from the low quality views. But I will suggest, since we're setting up a local intent campaign, that we would not try to use placements. You could actually use placements to try and place your video ad on HGTV as an example. But really, now you're narrowing in way too much, we would argue. Although it is true that you could use it for exclusions. So there are particular channels that you know you don't want to be a part of for whatever reason. You can certainly use that. And then the last thing I would say is landing pages. We'd probably stay away from that as well, and that would be our advice. So there are ways to really hone in on exactly what target you want so you can make the most of your marketing budget. You want to make it as narrow as possible to the group of people that you've identified through your market research who are most likely to be your best prospects.
Okay, thanks, Scott, for that. I think that really did show what a powerful tool Google Ads can be when targeting people with videos. And I can see why you might say Google is creepy, scary, powerful, but they've got the data, and it's arguably the best targeting that marketing has ever seen. So after creepy and scary, we're going to look for something a little more lighthearted. This next section is perhaps the most entertaining part of this particular webinar. We're going to tackle the question of how to get your prospect to engage with your ads. And we've gathered a few examples of how organizations have quickly engaged with their prospects in some very creative ways. So let's take a look.
So we've talked about how difficult it is to get your point across very quickly. Let's see how this video gets the point across without really needing words.
Paul's kids, because parenting is hard enough.
So that one might be a little close to home, but definitely useful, especially during COVID times.
Well, there's a humor element in this one, but this ad really draws parents in because it's so relatable. I mean, I think it's safe to say that if you've had a small child around, then you've been germed on somehow.
Yeah, you kind of feel sorry for both of them, but the cough drop lollipop makes her happy, which undoubtedly will make any parent happy. So it's actually remarkable how much emotion and relatability you can express in such a short video.
Right. Humor and emotion are excellent ways to connect and engage with this viewer. And this one uses two emotions. So it's very well done.
So here's an ad from Mercedes. Sorry, here's an ad from Mercedes-Benz that's really set up in an interesting way.
So there's a few things this ad does really well. First, it grabs the viewer's attention because there's no music. There's just the sound of a car accelerating. And second, the words flash across the screen very quickly, enticing people to pay attention so they'll see the message. That's especially useful in this ad because many viewers just watch the countdown clock in order to skip the ad. But this draws their eye away from that.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty memorable ad for 3.8 seconds. A voiceover would probably have only detracted from the message. I mean, the sound of the engine is pretty much all you need.
So those are pretty clever ways of getting a point across, but they don't all have to be that clever.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward, but it uses imagery and the music pretty well to paint a picture of taking a vacation by way of a candy bar. Because if you're hearing a steel drum, you probably aren't in Minnesota. The island music connects with the image and hopefully working to solidify that connection in the viewer's brain. So they'll remember the ad or the music when they see the candy name.
And remember, if this is run as part of a sequence, the 6-second ad only has to get your attention as a part of the lead-in or the warm-up or the tease, amplify, and echo type of ad sequence. So if Mounds is smart, they have a solid call to action in another ad in the sequence. And so far, we've only looked at those short 6-second ads, but if we're building sequence ads, we'll also need some longer ones. And this ad engages the viewer by specifically calling out that skip ad feature.
You can skip this ad, but then you'll electrocute this puppy. Good for you. You just saved the puppy. And in the process, you cost Nail Communications about 50 cents. But that's all right with us, because when we get the bill from YouTube for this ad, we'll donate the same exact amount to the ASPCA to save some more puppies. Click here so you can do the same.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about that. I don't know that I love the idea of threatening a dog even in jest, but it's definitely attention grabbing.
They can pull it off though, because they say they're going to give money to the ASPCA, which is an organization dedicated to protecting animals against cruelty.
Yeah, they did a good job of making the electrocution joke within 6 seconds. So I guess that the ad worked pretty well.
Yeah, the idea of making a joke that explicitly uses the skip ad feature is pretty clever. But now let's see how to bring them all together. So we talked in the strategy segment about the tease, amplify, echo, and the warm-up sequence models. So we thought we'd give an example of one of those next.
So we've already seen the 3.8 second ad from Mercedes-Benz. So this is part 2 of the warm-up sequence.
This one actually did use the full 6 seconds of the bumper ad, and it's an interesting perspective from the viewer's standpoint. When many viewers just watch the countdown clock, the words flashing on the screen really pull your eyes away from it. And rather than the viewer leaving the ad behind by skipping, the car in the ad is leaving the viewer behind. And it's over before they can skip.
Yeah, and no doubt the viewer appreciates that it's really short. But also, if you've targeted the type of consumer who Google considers in market for a sports car, chances are that the audience will appreciate the commercial even more. Okay, so that was part 2 of a warm-up sequence. So let's see the third installment of the warm-up sequence.
All right, and now that we're warmed up, and especially if we're in market, as you said, it may have left us wanting to see more. So here's the last ad in that sequence.
Yeah, so the first time I saw this ad, and even today, I still get chill bumps from it. It really has quite the payoff. So other than my chill bumps, Bella, why does this ad work?
Well, again, it's clearly a continuation of the first two ads.
The same unmistakable yellow car.
Right, but you also hear that iconic, unmistakable revved engine at exactly 5 seconds into the ad, just before the viewer is able to skip the ad. So that's what we call a quick start. This one keeps you watching precisely because you've already been warmed up by the other two ads.
Also, as you said, with the first two ads, the viewer is sort of left behind, but with this one, the car just almost sort of catches you. It's coming at you, then passing you. It's a really cool perspective.
And this ad's probably good enough to work all by itself, but the quick start of the warm-up sequence really whets the appetite of the viewer.
And speaking of a quick start, that's important enough to talk about a little bit more.
Well, we've seen plenty of attention grabbers, and in the strategy segment, we said that ideally we have 6, 15, and 30-second ads in a sequence.
But what we're going to do with this ad is pause it at 6 seconds and ask a question of everyone. It's not a poll, it's more of a rhetorical question.
All right, let's roll them. Okay, so this is the point where you can skip forward in your ad. Do you want to skip forward? Or do you want to know why this girl is jumping and slapping a Post-it note on her wall? I mean, it's a very odd thing to do, so it sort of grabs your attention. And the reality is that people are more engaged today with online videos than they are with traditional TV commercials. So a quick start like this is definitely a best practice, but then you've got to pay the viewer off with a story.
Right, and of course, you asking everyone if they wanted to skip forward was a rhetorical question. So let's watch the rest of the ad now.
So who's first? No way. Did you see that?
When you write something down, you're 42% more likely to make it happen. Post-it Super Sticky Notes have 2 times the sticking power. So stick, re-stick, and make it stick with Post-it brand.
So, I mean, is there really anything better than an underdog story? She had a goal, a dream, and Post-it notes help her make her dream come true.
Right, everyone loves the underdog. The fact that they were able to tell that story in 30 seconds is pretty impressive too.
Yeah, I think the larger point is that the ad did several things right. It got your attention within 6 seconds, and it had a payoff for the viewer with 3M's product playing a central role in making her dream come true. I think it was really well done.
And speaking of doing things well, we have a bullet list of best practices next.
Right. First, it's a technical thing, but you want to make sure your ads are good for both mobile and desktop viewers. If the product is too small on a small screen, you might want to rethink the product placement.
Second, as we've pointed out more than once here, for the longer ads, you want to get their attention within 6 seconds. A sequence may help you keep their attention longer, so long as you tie the ads together within 6 seconds, like Mercedes did with their revved engine at 5 seconds.
And it may be easier said than done, but emotion is a great captivator. And if it's funny, viewers may wait for the punchline.
And we've seen a number of ways to creatively highlight the product. And it doesn't have to be as creative as the Post-it underdog story. The island music for the candy bar was also pretty creative.
But of course, it is best to tell a story. Viewers have 2 choices: skip the ad or be drawn in. Give them a reason to continue watching. So I think we're going to insert the feedback form now. But before we go, Scott wanted to mention to people about the keyword gap analysis that we do for clients.
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute. Yes, I did want to mention that. So this is we do the keyword gap analysis for both organic and paid keywords to see where your competitors rank and where you rank. And those colorful little circles on the screen represent a Venn diagram, which shows visually how many keywords your competitors are ranking for and how many your company is ranking for. But it also shows where they overlap. And this is a really good thing for every company to do. And if you want us to do it for us, just before you let us know. In some cases, actually, this page right here all by itself was really valuable because it actually made them question whether they should shift to or include different keywords and targets. It can impact both your paid search and your SEO strategy. So let us know in the feedback forum if you're interested in learning more about how to get this assessment from us.
Okay, and we are just about at the top of the hour, and I think that's going to do it for today.
Yeah, so if you have any questions about something we've talked about or anything else really for that matter, feel free to send me an email. My email address is on the screen.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
And I'm going to leave that feedback form up for those who haven't filled it out yet, but we really appreciate it. And we're just going to go on mute and leave it up. Okay, thanks. Bye.